This is Let's Finally Talk, a heart-to-heart with Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, live streaming every night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm your host, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Join me on YouTube at Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, on Facebook at Dr. Jacalyn, and on Instagram at Dr. Jacalyn, as seen and heard on the USA Global TV and Radio Network worldwide. We've earned the YouTube Silver Creator Award, and I've earned the 100 Global Top Women Icons in Media. My TV shows are Iconic Women, Creating a World of Possibilities, Judgment, the Hidden Sin, A Woman's Prerogative, Sisterhood Across Borders, It's Your Healthy Lifestyle, and the latest updates. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow. We're streaming every night live on Let's Finally Talk. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another episode of Let's Finally Talk with yours truly, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. We always explore areas that are related to helping us find inner peace. And if you've ever watched any of my programming, you know that I'm truly about helping you with tools so that you can find inner peace, so that collectively we are one step closer to world peace. So today's topic is a relevant one, and especially during the time of year that we're in now when it's very busy and we've probably got lists of things that we have to do. And many times things will interrupt what it is that we're doing. And so today is not about finding blame or judgment. It's about how can we find the tools that we need in those moments so that we can show up with clarity and still have peace. So thanks again for joining wherever it is you are in the world. I'm truly happy to have you. And we are streaming on many different platforms. So wherever you are, please like, follow, subscribe. Any of those things will do. Thank you. So life rarely follows a script. And plans change and expectations fall short, and moments that maybe we looked forward to for so long. It could be something like a business meeting. It could be a big event that you were planning, a wedding, a birthday. It could even be a date, and it doesn't come through. And so we are going to examine what actually happens to us when things don't go exactly the way that we've planned. And I can share with you that I've been a longtime planner. I've had things planned for weeks and months in advance, and I rarely would deviate from the plan. And people would say, you're very structured. And I would say, I am structured because I'm disciplined, because I get things done. And while those things are really true, when you are really holding on to a schedule and you have very little flexibility and something happens, it can really upset you in so many ways. You can start pondering questions like, why is this happening to me? Why do all these bad things happen to me? And so I've been able, through a lot of work on myself and with coaches and mentors, to turn things around and ask the question is, why is this happening for me? When you think about it that way, you may be given an opportunity to explore something that you wouldn't have had time to do otherwise. We've all heard stories from people in mainstream media about how they planned for a trip and then they missed their flight and how upset they were about the flight. And then as a result of missing the flight, something else opened up for them, or, heaven forbid, the flight crashed and they weren't on it and they were supposed to be. So I'd like us to consider shifting our mindset and our perspective to being open to the realization that things will change. Things will come up that we will not have in our control. And so by accepting this and expecting it, we can do what I always ask you to consider. It's finding the solution. So if you have made a plan to do something and it doesn't go accordingly, what can you then do with that time? How can you then become empowered to take control of your life and your situation instead of retreating into a place of weakness and sadness and giving all of your power over to the uncertainty of things happen and they're not in our control? So, our key discussion points today are why unmet expectations can trigger frustration, disappointment, and self criticism, the difference between disappointment and defeat, and how rigid expectations, like the ones I share that I used to have, increase stress and emotional reactivity. So, when we think about elevated listening, which is the platform that I've built and trademarked, we have our golden rule, which, if you followed me last night, you saw this. This is the golden rule. Okay, the golden rule right here. One of my friends made this for me in Greece. Thank you very much, Deborah Wooten. And the three questions that I asked you to consider: is it kind? Is it necessary? And is it true? So when something doesn't go your way and you get very upset about it, and you start beating yourself up and you say, "Oh, this always happens to me." Is that a kind thing to say? This always happens to me? Not really. Is it necessary to say that? Do you have to put yourself down and blame? And then finally, is it actually true? Do these things always happen to you? Most likely not. Things are going to happen to all of us. If you're on this face of this earth long enough, trust me, things do happen. But we now will have to shift our mindset and anticipate that things are going to happen. And so I don't remember who it was. One of my mentors mentioned to me that every time something goes awry or it doesn't go our way, we get the opportunity to reframe it. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about a situation where you were really planning for something and it's the holidays. So let's talk about the fact that maybe you had asked for a certain gift. Or I know there's a lot of people who get engaged during the holidays. And so you expected you were going to get engaged and it didn't happen. The way you can look at it is, oh, this person doesn't care about me, or of course, this person doesn't want to marry me, or et cetera, et cetera. But maybe it happened because it was giving you additional time to do something, to revisit something, to get to know who you are, maybe to learn more about your partner. Maybe it's an opportunity for you to consider, is this really the permanent relationship that you're looking for? So these are all just questions to consider when you're thinking about the fact that something hasn't gone your way. Now, what if something really terrible happens? And we hear this, people say, well, I was in a car accident. I didn't need that to happen to me. No, of course not. No one wants to be in a car accident that I know of. So I've heard stories from people that one person I remember telling me that they actually were injured in an accident. And as a result of that, they met the love of their life. Someone else had told me that they were injured, and as a result of the injury, they had to run some tests, and it turned out that the person had cancer, and it wouldn't have been probably diagnosed otherwise unless they had been in this accident and needed to have these tests. So we don't know what's going on with the unseen. We don't know what's going on in the universe specifically, but we can reframe it as an opportunity. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, something absolutely horrible happens. And there's been a lot of that going around. So we don't need to put any focus on that. But maybe it's an opportunity for us to think about how we're showing up. I remember someone saying to me that there has to be a war so that there can be peace. And I don't know how I feel about that personally, but what I do know is that every time something bad happens, it gives us an opportunity to reframe how we are showing up individually and collectively. So by taking the time to think, who can I help? Who can I mentor? Who can I be there for, a shoulder just to listen? There's so many people in the world who have literally no one to listen to them. And one of my friends talks a lot about the power of laughter and the power of smiling. Just by smiling in the face of what you consider to be defeat can actually be your next victory, because your mind may become clear. When we are holding ourselves back with negative energy, with negative thoughts, we're not able to move forward in a positive way. And so I challenge you to think about this. Think about shifting your mindset to every experience that happens to you is supposed to happen to you for a reason or another. And maybe it's an opportunity for you to learn something from it that you can then take and use as a tool in your present day life. And I know that's a lot to consider because we're very hardwired into our thoughts. You know, I'm 62, and I would say up until I was 55, I was very set in my ways. Now you can say I'm a little set in my ways, but in a different way. But I was set in my ways and very structured and very disciplined. And I'm still structured and disciplined, but not the same way. I realized that at any moment things can shift. In fact, last year I moved here to New Jersey. And in the span of, I would say, 4 months in moving to New Jersey, I had no working toilets. I had no heat for 2 months. And I ended up getting ulcerative colitis, which is probably the worst bout of ulcerative colitis that I've ever had. It's hard to say because I've had it many times. And at the same time, my apartment was flooded through no cause of my own, through the people upstairs decided allegedly to hang clothing from their sprinklers. So all of those things happened to me. And the fact that I was so ill and I had to move into a hotel, but I still had to carry on. And I kept thinking to myself, I don't know why this is happening to me, but I'm going to embrace it and say to myself, okay, there's something I'm supposed to take away from this. And what I can tell you is that now, with two working heaters, I rarely run them. So last year, when the temperature outside was 18 or 20 degrees, very similar to what it's been here now, I was completely consumed with the fact that I didn't have heat, and for good reason, because I'm paying a lot of money for my rent and the heat should be working. But today I reframe and say, I'll put on some additional clothes. I don't actually need to run the heaters all the time. So it is interesting how a year later, I can shift my mindset. And I think one of the key takeaways when I had to move into the hotel for 3 weeks last year, and I was really sick with ulcerative colitis, I said to myself, I am going to heal myself. I am in this beautiful hotel. It's being paid for by insurance. Of course, I'm upset. I'm upset that my apartment was flooded and that everything had to be moved out of it and that I had to change everything and that I was so sick. But I ended up healing myself. I had gone to the doctor and they said, we have to put you on a biologic. And they've been telling me that for 30 years. And I said, I'm not doing it. So they ordered this other drug, which I ended up getting and I never took. And I said to myself, I will heal myself. Now, ulcerative colitis is an incurable disease. There's no cure. It's chronic. It is a horrible disease. But I can share with you that through not having heat, and by the way, I moved 1,200 miles after burying my mother. So there was a lot going on last year. She died the year before, but that's another story because I had to take care of matters in another state. So what I took away from all of that, not having heat, not having the toilets working and having the flood and moving into a hotel and having ulcerative colitis, was I was strong enough to will myself to get better. And I did. And fingers are crossed and prayers to the universe and to God that I stay that way for some period of time. So I really feel like when my life has been interrupted with plans that I made that seem so fantastic, that I learned something from it. And I'll give another example. I was recently in another country for business and I had a project and the project didn't go the way it was supposed to go. And so I was by myself and it was a holiday and I was working on this project and I started to cry. I cried for maybe 10 or 15 minutes because I was, I guess, frustrated and I had everything planned out about how things were going to go. And then it didn't go that way. And so as a result of that, I learned a lot. I learned a lot that has helped me with where I am today and what I'm doing. So you just never know where things can go unless you are open. When you are open and you have a mind shift, you go from woe is me. Why is this happening to me? It's always me. My life is this and my life is that, to wow, this is interesting. I wonder what's going to come from this. So that's how I am pretty much with everything, even including when I have to go to an airport. If the Uber doesn't show up, if this, that, and the other, I am completely prepared that I might not be going on the trip. Totally prepared. So I've been able to shift my mindset so that I don't prioritize things to a point where if it doesn't happen, I'm distraught. There's nothing that's that important to me that I'm going to be giving up my health for it. So if you are in a situation where you've got every box checked and you've got all your I's dotted and your T's crossed, I promise you something is going to come up that is not going to go your way. And how will you show up? How will you deal with it? Now, there's different paths that we can take. And of course, we always have choice. That's what I remind people, is that as long as we wake up and we have our faculties about us, which many people do not, we have the opportunity to make choices. And so we can choose to go with the flow, so to speak, or we can choose to be steadfast in what our thoughts are and how we dictate our behavior. But we can't dictate anyone else's behavior. And I think that's a key point. I know people who still believe they can get someone to change their behavior. And what I'd like you to consider is, what if you took the pressure off yourself instead of trying to change someone? We do what Mel Robbins says. And, I've never met Mel Robbins. I would love to, but her let them theory, it is absolutely brilliant. Let people be who they are. Instead of trying to change them, fix them, we want to put people into a box. We want to fit them in a certain mold. Why not just embrace people for who they are? And if they're not who you want them to be, you move on. And I've shared this before about relationships, and I'll bring it up again. I don't know who originally came up with this, but it wasn't me. But if you look out your window, wherever it is you are, depending, you may see a tree. And here in the northeast part of the United States, we are going into winter next week. So we've already had snow. There's tons of trees outside my window. And I look at them and I really marvel at the fact that there were leaves on these trees. And now the leaves are not there. We have branches for the most part, and then we've got the roots. Well, the leaves and the branches and the roots are just like people in our lives. They're just like relationships. The leaves come and they go. And some people come and go in our life for a reason. They're there for a reason, for a season. Yet we hold on so tightly because we develop feelings for the people, and then we can't believe that they're gone. Well, if you believe in the universe, if you believe in a power higher than us, the whole thing is already orchestrated. And so they were meant to be in our life, or we were meant to be in their life for a reason or a season. Then we have the branches of the tree. Branches are pretty sturdy unless a power company's coming to cut them down for some reason, or there's a storm that comes that breaks them off. They're there, but they're not as strong as the roots. And so at the core, at the center of the tree are the roots. And if you've ever seen trees that have been around for a long time, the roots are deep. And sometimes they actually break the asphalt or the cement, and they still persevere. The sidewalk's broken, but the roots are still there. Those are the kind of relationships that you can depend on. And so the most important relationship of all, obviously, whatever your faith is, whatever your higher power is, but it's the belief in yourself. When you believe so strongly in yourself, when the plans change, you're okay with it because you're flexible. You're like the tree in the wind. If you think about it, how many storms have trees endured? And so, yes, the leaves may come off, some of the branches, but the roots are still there in the ground. And so when you learn to be like the tree and to be flexible and move back and forth with life, you'll find, in my opinion, you're not as stressed out. And so learning to mitigate the stress, learning to give yourself and others grace is a great way, a great entree into finding peace. So anytime you have negative questions that are coming up and you're beating yourself up because something didn't go right, remember the golden rule. The golden rule, which is before you judge yourself, pause and ask yourself, is it kind? Is it necessary? And is it true? Okay, so I have this as a reminder because I'm pretty hard on myself, but I have a lot of tools that I use, and I only will be detrimental to myself for 10 minutes. And then I have to move on because I don't have time to waste. Time is the gift that we have. So think about how you're spending your time, who you're spending your time with, and ask yourself, are you coming from a place of peace? So, for our elevated listening insight, when your plans change, pause and before you react, ask yourself the three questions. Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? So, our key takeaways for today is not everything that changes is a loss. Not everything that changes means it's a nightmare, means it's a failure. Flexibility, like the tree, is a true form of strength. Think about people who practice yoga and they have incredible flexibility. They're pretty strong. If you've ever seen people do inversions, that's a pretty clear example of someone who's strong mentally and physically, because you may be physically strong enough to do it. I personally think I am physically strong enough to do inversions, but I'm not mentally strong enough because I'm coming from a place of fear. If I wasn't so afraid of doing a handstand, I guarantee I could do a handstand, but I'm terrified of it, and I realize that. So that's something that I have to work on. So, combining that strength and that flexibility are tools that you can use when things don't go your way. I've even seen people at airports when flights have been delayed, they start doing yoga poses. And, at first, like years ago, I think, well, that's a little something or other, but that's a judgmental statement. But now I get it. I totally get it. You go to that place of Zen where you say to yourself, okay, this is out of my control. And I had booked a flight that was at 6 in the morning this year, actually, over the summer. And I had to get up at 3 something. I was in an Airbnb. It was pouring down rain. And I got to the airport, plenty of time. And of course, the flight was delayed. Not only was it delayed once, but it was delayed 5 times. And then we all had to stay at a hotel. And the hotel was comped. But believe me, if the Board of Health were to come in there with the blue lights, the black lights, whatever they are, I'm sure they would see a few things. But I had already anticipated when I booked the 6 a.m. flight, which believe me, I didn't want to book, but I did it because they only had 2 flight options. And I thought I'd rather leave first thing in the morning than late at night. So this being said, I anticipated that the flight was going to be delayed. And so what did I do? I had children's books that I had written, and I went about signing them and giving them to parents who had children at the airport, because these poor kids have been up at the crack of dawn and they're in their pajamas. And I just got to work. I got a workstation set up and I just started working. And so before I knew it, it was the final time they had canceled the flight. I think it was 5 p.m. And they had said, here's your vouchers and you can go pick a hotel and you can get something to eat. And so that's what I did. They had a swimming pool there, which I used, and I did my laps. And I met a few really nice people there at the pool, the indoor pool. And so therefore I made the best of it because I had planned in advance. I anticipated that something could go wrong. And therefore I wasn't disappointed. So I will leave you with that, thinking about, before you beat yourself up when something doesn't happen, ask yourself the things that you're telling yourself. Are they kind? Are they necessary? And are they true? Probably 2 out of 3. The answer is no. So let's get rid of those thoughts. Let's be more like the roots of the tree as opposed to the leaves. So now that we are closing off, I would just like to say, thank you very much. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. And I'd love for you to join me. I am streaming this show, Let's Finally Talk, every day as often as possible, but it's not always at the same time. So even though the intro says 8 o'clock at night, I was trying to do it every 8 o'clock at night, but I was traveling in different time zones. So you can find all of our programming over on our YouTube channels, and I will share the graphic for that. And if you haven't taken a look, please do, because USA Global TV and Radio is much more than me. We have show hosts from all over the world, and we have people who are delivering world-class content about many topics. So take a look at our channel, subscribe if you would, and thank you again for being here. I'm going to close out with a little preview of a single that I've released with my dear friend, Dr. Madeline Chan. She's featured as her stage name, Maddie Loveday, and it's called Please Listen to What I Say.
Listen, babe, now, listen, babe, now. Listen, babe, now, listen, babe, now. Listen, babe, now, listen, babe, now.
This is Let's Finally Talk, a heart-to-heart with Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Live streaming every night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm your host, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Join me on YouTube at Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, on Facebook at Dr. Jacalyn, and on Instagram at Dr. Jacalyn, as seen and heard on the USA Global TV and Radio Network worldwide. We've earned the YouTube Silver Creator Award, and I've earned the 100 Global Top Women Icons in Media. My TV shows are Iconic Women, Creating a World of Possibilities, Judgment, the Hidden Sin, A Woman's Prerogative, Sisterhood Across Borders, It's Your Healthy Lifestyle, and the latest updates. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow. We're streaming every night live on Let's Finally Talk.